I am so excited to introduce our first keynote speaker, Yana Garcia. She is the Deputy Secretary for Environmental Justice, Tribal Affairs, and Border Relations at the California Environmental Protection Agency. Prior to her work for the state, Yana was an associate attorney at Earth Justice in San Francisco and a staff attorney at Communities for a Better Environment, serving in Huntington Park and Oakland. Her legal practice areas have focused on an array of issues from environmental justice and civil rights to land use and oil and gas extraction. We are so honored to have her here and share her unique expertise and insight. Yana, can I invite you to come on screen, turn on your video?
Of course, thank you. And hi everyone, I'm very grateful to be here with you all. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Thank you for having me. I don't want to take too much time, but just want to share a little bit about my background and perspective at Cali, PA, in the hopes that that can help inform some of the discussions that you all have and questions that you all have here. A little bit about me. I've come to environmental justice from always having an understanding of the environment and conservation from the perspective of my family and my family's roots. I'm a second generation Chicana from California. My parents were born and raised in Los Angeles, and I was born and raised in Oakland, California. So generally urban upbringing on this side of the border. However, my family in Mexico are farmers. And I was lucky enough to be able to spend time with family on both sides of the border and recall as a kid the impact that NAFTA had. Of course, I didn't understand what the North American Free Trade Agreement was when I was 10 years old, but later came to learn that what I was seeing as an impact on my family who were corn growers, what the impact that a large-scale trade agreement had on their livelihood, on their ability to not only make ends meet, but just simply put food on the table and live off the land. It really made me think about the importance of access to land, access to water, what changes in land use and growing of food can mean for an entire community, an entire state and nation. So when I actually went to UC Santa Cruz, so somewhat in the area that many of you are in, have a very soft spot for that region, for Watsonville, for Salinas, and really, really appreciate that area and everything that happens there. When I graduated from school, from UC Santa Cruz as an undergraduate, I was really interested in better understanding the indigenous relationship to the land, to our resources, our air, our water, and our land across this country. And so worked with a number of tribes before I went on to be an attorney. And so have always really placed my thinking around environmental issues centered on indigenous people and the stewardship that so many of us have always shown for our land and our resources. And I think that's really relevant to so many of our agricultural workers and now deemed essential workers through the COVID crisis, always essential workers, but in particular now as we're facing COVID, are facing impacts that result from the essential work that so many of us do. Want to just share a little bit about Cali, PA, and how we're thinking about the intersection between COVID impacts and climate change. At Cali, PA, our mission is to protect and enhance health and the environment. That means that we're always looking at the overlay between pollution and environmental impacts and how those affect human health. During the time of COVID, we're in particular thinking about this because of the crisis that we're in. There have been some studies done, including one done by Harvard University in April, that have looked specifically at the ways in which people who are exposed to particulate matter air pollutant emissions, that's dust particles and other air pollutants, exacerbates COVID impacts. In addition, we have a lot of studies that show that particulate matter emissions also affect communities of color. We know as well that most of our essential workers are communities of color. So we're looking at ways in which our communities are impacted at a scale much broader and much more significant than other communities when it comes to COVID-19. This is also the case when we think about climate change. Air pollution causes health impacts, whether it's COVID-19 or others. The disproportionality of those health impacts is faced by communities of color. And when we're thinking about driving down climate change and climate pollutants, we're also thinking about the health benefits that can be conferred from those emission reductions. So this really means that the same communities that are affected by COVID and affected by climate change are at the center of developing solutions for both. We know that COVID-19 is the crisis right now from a health and economic standpoint. Climate change is also the looming crisis that is continuing to affect us. So in my line of work, I really like to think about not just the impact, but what are the potential solutions? And to me, I think because the same communities are affected by these two critical issues, it's incredibly important that we actually put these communities in the driver's seat for developing solutions. From a health and climate standpoint, we have to look at the ways in which our policies are serving those who are most vulnerable and most impacted by these crises. That means that your expertise is extraordinarily helpful for our policy agenda. So I want to uplift the fact that when we think about what an environmentalist looks like, when we think about who a climate activist is, who a climate champion is, that really is all of you. It's part of my job to work with all of you, to work with organizations like Regeneración and others, to work with grassroots community members and organizations that represent them, to understand not only the impacts that are focused in these communities and that are affecting our communities, but the solutions that come from our communities and how we can uplift those at the state level. Now I want to say here, with so many of you coming from maybe different areas in the same region, different walks of life, partnerships are critical to this work. We're seeing right now, I think, a time where so many issues are coinciding. We're looking at a lot of issues around law enforcement and reform among our law enforcement community. We're looking at an election coming up and many local and regional elections that are crucial to the future of our state and the future of our country. And we're again looking at the COVID-19 crisis, looking at climate change, looking at job loss and job impacts and economic impacts. That means that all of these issues are really coming together. And in many ways, we have many organizations that focus on one issue or another, but what we have to do is build really broad coalitions to be able to address all of these issues in an integrated fashion. And so many of you are doing that very work, creating spaces like this, where people are coming together to share their perspectives on these various issues, to build an intersectional platform to understand how all of these issues are integrated and how we can focus on developing solutions that are likewise integrated. So these partnerships are crucial to moving forward in a way that is more equitable, that is more just, that will give us the sustainability that we need, and that will serve our communities, rural and agricultural communities in particular. And I just want to offer that I would love to be part of any partnerships that come out of this gathering, of future gatherings. Really look forward to hearing about the discussions today. I'm honored to be here with you all, have been honored to support this work through Regeneración, and hope that I can stay in touch with you all and hear about how these discussions go, and I hope you enjoy the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yana, for sharing your unique story. It's so great to hear your background and the work that you're doing. Thank you for making the connection between environmental degradation and the effects on climate change in our community. People often think about climate change as an issue measured in degrees, but we see it here in our communities in the Pajaro Valley and all over California. So we are here to frame solutions by acknowledging the roots of these issues and to begin to create equitable solutions.